Today, we're going to talk about Amazon ads during Q4. I sat down with Cameron Scot, who's an Amazon ads expert, and we discussed a variety of different topics, including what to expect from Q4, what to do with your ad campaigns, whether you should start separate ones for sweatshirts, hoodies, which campaign types do best during Q4, and also what to do when the delivery window actually shuts leading up to Christmas. When things don't deliver on time, what do you have to do with the ads then? So many different topics were covered in this discussion. It is quite a long discussion, so we split it up into two different parts. I will upload the second part to this in a few days on this channel. And by the way, Cameron's links will also be in the description if you want to check him out for some more in-depth Amazon ads knowledge.
Philip, thanks for taking the time to join me today. We are answering questions from Philip's Facebook group. I'm just having a discussion around Q4 and what to expect and things that happen and how to manage your ads. Philip, thanks for taking the time to join me in this discussion today.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm really looking forward to this, and I think it's definitely an interesting topic because I've been getting a lot of questions about what happens with ads, what sort of products to advertise, all these different things. I think there's a lot that people need to be aware of, and I hope we can cover a lot of those questions and help people out today.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, I think this is my 6th holiday season with Amazon Merch on Demand.
Oh, wow.
So some of the stuff I just maybe take for granted. So definitely talking about it. And for those that don't know Philip, he's a Merch on Demand seller, has a Facebook group with thousands of merch sellers, which we'll have links in the description. To join as his group and check him out.
It is a Discord group, by the way, but that's fine. It's very similar.
Oh, Discord group. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we talk about lots of different topics in there, not just Amazon ads. So if you've got questions about design, research, different marketplaces, you can get people to answer you there, or I sometimes answer questions as well. And just to relate to what you said then, your 6th holiday season, I'm definitely different with my experience. I've only had one so far using ads, right? So I've sold on Amazon for I think 4 years now, but for some reason I didn't realize I should be using ads until a year or 2 years ago. So I've only experienced 1 year with ads, but that was definitely super insightful and fun. So why don't we just tell people that are new to merch in general what to expect, because Q4 is sort of the highlight of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I would say in general, just in Q4, just more traffic, more sales. In my experience, it usually starts ticking up in November. Now, if you're doing Halloween designs, that sort of thing, you'll probably see an increase before that. But mine being just more I'd say evergreen, non-seasonal. I don't really do holiday designs. I start to see it in November start to ramp up, and it's kind of just a curve that slowly increases until peak. The closer you are to Christmas, the higher the traffic and sales, and then you see a sudden cliff when when those shipping times reach past Christmas.
It's the 20th of December, sort of from there it starts dropping down, and then it's the worst time. I feel it's the next 2 or 3 weeks after that. It's no one buys.
Yeah, it's everything just shuts down. But I mean, there's still sales to be had. But yeah, so slow, kind of that slow uptick starting November. But it really kicks off Black Friday, which is the day after Thanksgiving. That's the first day that you see a huge spike in sales. I've seen historically about a 3 times increase in sales on Black Friday compared to previous days.
It's a bit earlier.
Drops off.
Well, by the way,
what?
Usually it's towards the end of November, but this year's 24th, so it's a bit earlier, which is nice. So maybe the sales will ramp up earlier than usual.
Possibly. What was it? I'm terrible at tracking data. I'll have to look and see what the compared.
I think
to
it might have been
the
29th or 28th last year. It was definitely a lot later. So
that could be good for us, definitely. Because that's when it seems to start. And the closer you are to Christmas, the sales just keep increasing. It's just that first Black Friday is kind of that kickoff. A little bit slower that weekend, but then Cyber Monday is even bigger than Black Friday, in my experience, from what I've seen in sales, which may be surprising to some. Black Friday gets kind of all the hoopla, but Cyber Mondays in Amazon is even bigger.
When do you peak in December usually? Because that's when I have some of the biggest days usually.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be, the peak is basically right before the shipping times cut off, and those are going to vary. It's going to depend on your product, what you're selling. Merch on Demand has two different, what they've done in the past anyways, and I assume they're going to do something similar. There's two different shipping cutoff dates tiers, one tier for bestsellers and one for kind of everything else, where they kind of allocate their production for just the bestsellers, the stuff that's selling the most, where those will still deliver by Christmas several days later than everything else. So you get several more sales days. So the peak is basically like the closer you can get to Christmas, it just keeps going up and up and up until once those shipping dates happen to show after Christmas. That's when you see basically a sales cliff.
From your experience, like looking at an average day throughout the year and comparing that to, some of the top sale days in Q4, what's like the increase of how many more sales?
For me personally, this past year, maybe $300 to $500 in royalties per day. Last year, my peak day was close to 8,000 in royalties, so 25 times.
Yeah, okay. For me, it's more like 10x, but
I think it's going to depend on what you're selling too.
Yeah.
Most of my sales do come from one best-selling product, which is in a very highly competitive niche. So I think there's maybe more of a higher ceiling for that. It's competing on terms like gift for dad. So these very broad search terms that a lot of products just aren't going to really be able to take advantage of that kind of traffic. It's just that the traffic potential isn't going to be as high on search terms that, I don't know, just like very niche specific. It's just not going to have that kind of fluctuation. Generally, you're going to see a traffic increase just across the board, but particularly for like gift giving type of search terms.
Well, I think we've got fairly similar sort of product databases where we've got, a lot of evergreen stuff, also a lot of scalable designs, right, for evergreen niches. I think you do that as well, like scaling through lots of different niches.
Yes.
And from my experience, it's like you'll have some bestsellers that bring in, most of your sales throughout Christmas, and then you get all of these random, just evergreen designs selling like once or twice a day that you've never seen sell all throughout the year, and you probably thought you wasted your time, but they still, it all adds up. On top of years of bestsellers.
In general, it's like just an overall lift and just across the board. And yeah, there's going to be stuff that sells that you may not have sold all year. And part of it's just going to be that massive increase in traffic that comes to Amazon. I have no idea what their traffic looks like as far as like, they don't release the numbers of how much traffic they see, but it's just a ton.
So that's in terms of what happens with sales, right? You could 10x your sales, 20x your sales on a daily basis. What happens in terms of ads though? Like if you're looking at bids, ACOS, like CPC, all of this stuff, what changes from your experience?
So just like sales kind of has a slow, steady increase, so does everything else, like every single metric. CPCs go up 30-40% by peak holiday or peak sales time versus maybe the rest of the year. So I mean, that means part of it's just like there's increased traffic, which there's a little bit of a competing force here. So maybe I can explain it with the more traffic there is, the more ad inventory there's available, which brings down the level of competition. But on the same token, there's also a lot more people competing for those ads now. There's a lot of people that turn on ads in Q4 or start increasing their bids that didn't the rest of the year. And there's probably gonna be a lot of people watching that's just getting started with ads for the first time this holiday season because they know they need to take advantage of it. There's a huge number of people doing the exact same thing. So the competition increases.
So the idea is to increase your bids as well so you can still be part of the race, right?
Definitely. You can't just leave your bids up where they're at right now. You do have to watch it and make adjustments throughout the holiday sales period. One difference for me is how often I'm checking my ads. The closer it gets to that peak sales day, usually starting about Black Friday, I'm going from maybe every few days or once a week looking at my bids. or just general performance to every single day. And not even just every day, but throughout the day as well, to see what's currently happening with performance, what the spend is versus current sales, and making decisions based on that, whether it's increasing budget or bids or maybe lowering bids, seeing what the current CPCs are. But in general, all that stuff is increased. Higher competition, higher CPCs, higher click-through rate. Actually, click-through rate's the one thing I have seen that actually decreases. More like there's maybe some more window shoppers during the holiday season. So I have seen click-through decrease slightly. But the one really surprising thing is that even though CPCs increase, so does the conversion rate. Yeah. And this is another one that has this kind of big curve that the closer you get to that peak holiday season, the more it increases. On my peak days last year, the conversion rate was 3 times what my normal conversion rate would be the rest of the year. It's like those last minute shoppers. They have to buy something, and when they see it still ships by Christmas, they're going to buy it.
Yeah, prime shipping is such an easy thing to sell to people then, isn't it, if they desperately need it. And I agree with that as well. And it's from my experience, right, again, it's just one Q4, but from my experience, a lot of campaigns did really well, like, compared to the year. Like, you might hear this thinking bids are going up, all of this stuff is going up, it's more competitive, but also, it's converting a lot better. So I had campaigns that did really well during last Q4, and which now throughout the year they're not really doing that much, but I'm hopeful that they'll once again perform for the Christmas season, because it's just, people are so much more likely to actually buy if they see your ad.
Yeah, definitely.
Same for you,
have to get exposure. Yeah, the ads contribute a huge portion of my sales. Of course, there's the organic side too. So I tend to be pretty aggressive all the way up to that kickoff of Black Friday, even after that, because I know those peak sales days are still to come. It doesn't end at Black Friday or December 1st. It's closer. Last year, December 17th is when they started dropping off. So the 16th was my peak sales day. So part of the issue is we don't know when that's going to happen until it happens. I don't think Amazon even knows, basically, as long as they can keep up production. And again, there's that kind of 2-tier system for the merch on demand products that those best sellers do get that priority. So it's a bit of a game each year to figure out how long do you push those ads and be aggressive before you kind of tone it down and let the take advantage of their organic sales and really focus on maximizing as much profit. And it's tough. I don't know that I have a good answer for that. Last year I might have been too aggressive too long, thinking we'd have a couple more sales days. It looked like the way the shipping times were going, we might get up until the 18th, 19th, and then there was a sudden decrease. So I definitely missed out on maybe a few days of maximizing profit.
So when you say that maximizing profit, do you mean, let's say there's still shipping on time for 2 days, would you then lower your bids a lot so that your ad spend goes down and kind of?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say it's a lot, and that's where it's almost like a gut feeling. I don't have like specific rules like if this happens, do this. It's more of like paying attention to what's happening, using the information that you have, and just making the best decision possible. No one really knows. That's kind of what the issue is when sale. If we had like a crystal ball and we could see exactly when those shipping times are going to cut off, we'd have a lot better idea of when to maybe start maximizing profit. And by that, I just mean like lowering your bids where, I might be targeting something like a 30 to 40% ACoS, being really aggressive, trying to maintain those ranks. And part of this is with the best sellers, the search terms I'm competing on necessitate that they have high CPCs, upwards of $2 or more for specific terms. So at some point you can't run that constantly. You're just not going to maximize profit versus bringing down the bids, letting your organic sales take over and just kind of just taking in more of that profit than spending it on ads.
I bet some people are going to wonder, like, once the delivery window shuts, do I just turn off the ads? Like, because then the potential is so low, right? I'm guessing you're going to say no, but like, with such little like sale potential, what should we do as merch sellers, in your opinion?
I don't ever shut off my ads after the holiday season. I don't think there's really a reason for it. There's still sales that happen from December, whatever, cut off to January. And then, of course, we get into January, which is a new season. I don't think you have to pause your campaigns. What I do is just a massive bid and budget reduction just across the board, 80, 90%. So you can still pick up some of those. I mean, if you have a low enough bid, even if it's a lower conversion rate, because what you do, you definitely need to do something with your bids and budgets, because you're probably ramping them up over time, or should be up through that peak holiday sales season. And then once that cliff happens, massively lowering it. And if you don't, you're going to have a lot of people clicking on your ad, because it still ships. It will still ship. So Amazon will still show your ad. See, it's not going to deliver by the date they need it, and then
I never thought about this. Yeah, if you did leave your bids really high, you would just be showing them to people who see the wrong delivery date essentially, and who won't buy. So you want to minimize.
And that happened to me on the last day last year. Actually, I've still had my bids at a reasonable level, checking shipping times. One of the issues too is that the shipping times are different depending on the location you're in, how close you are to their warehouse or whatever it is. So where I might look and see, oh, they're still delivering by Christmas, everywhere else has stopped. So the sales aren't correlating to that ad spend still. So I ended up having, on the last day, I thought it was going to be the best sales day, and then it just never ended up performing. But so that's just part of the challenges too, is paying attention to when, not just the sales date. You can look on Amazon, you can keep changing the location, but it's also just paying attention to your sales. Are they correlating with what you've been seeing the previous days? As soon as you start seeing okay, the sales numbers aren't what it was yesterday, because you should be seeing an increase every single day. For most people, if you're at low volume, some of this isn't going to apply. There's just going to be too much volatility. But if you have products that are selling somewhat normally, or you're averaging 20, 30 sales per month, at least, you should be seeing that consistent rise in sales. So once you see maybe that isn't going as well as it could be this day, you might want to consider lowering your bids. They could be stopping shipment.
Or change, as a practical tip, change the zip code on Amazon, check different locations, and it might be that just by chance the zip code that you have selected still shows deliver on time, but all the other ones don't. So that's a good tip. I would have never thought to do that really, but it makes sense. So a lot of questions that I got were about product types as well, because obviously it's getting colder, and you would assume people will buy. Some people, I think, assume that more hoodie sales will happen, or more sweatshirt sales will happen rather than t-shirts. But I mean, that hasn't been my experience. It's still mainly t-shirts, but you do definitely see hoodies and sweatshirts ramping up. And I remember having a campaign, specifically a lottery campaign, specifically just for hoodies, and it did really well. Had a really good ACOS. And what sort of product types have worked well for you that don't tend to work during summer as much?
So standard tees absolutely still dominate, probably 95% of my sales. Hoodies do see an increase. Once in the colder months, people do tend to buy more, and they do, even though they account for a smaller percentage of the units that I sell, there's a much higher margin on those. So I still love hoodies. I like to put those in a separate lottery campaign as well because of these different margins. If you have a higher profit margin, assuming you have the same conversion rate between a lower profit margin and a higher profit margin product, your bid can be higher on the higher profit margin. It can withstand a higher cost per click than a standard t-shirt.
Yeah, that's true. That's something to bear in mind, isn't it? Because you could technically price, if you wanted to try it, at $49.99, where you get a lot, like $17 or $18 royalty, and that's a lot of ad spend to go through before you're losing out. So it's something you could test out, I guess. You could make a separate lottery campaign for that. I feel like I've tried that before, and it was a bit of a struggle to get sales at that price point. But you can test out having a higher royalty, and then your target A cost is a lot higher. All that stuff. So
I'm a big fan of that in general. Just having higher profit margins to have more ammo for ads. I've seen that even so. Generally, with products, the higher your prices, the lower your conversion rate is going to be. Less people are going to buy a more expensive product. But having the exposure, the ad spend to reach and get in front of more people more than outweighs any difference in conversion rate. And with the pricing, so they changed pricing earlier this year, and I ended up testing some higher pricing for standard tees, going from $19.99 to $21.99. I actually saw my sales increase on the higher price. Like it was within a week or two, my sales were up overall in units sold. So I don't see necessarily a huge conversion rate. Now, if you're increasing to $30-$40 a standard tee, you're probably gonna there's definitely like a sweet spot for that. But if we're talking a couple dollars difference, that couple dollars when you're spending 20, 30 cents, 50 cents on a click can go a long way. I mean, that's an extra, anywhere from 4, 5, 10 clicks on your product.
You're right. And for people who haven't tried it yet, I guess it kind of sounds scary because you're going from 19 into the 20s. It's sort of like in the magic barrier in a sense, but I feel like it also, to some people, it signals higher value in a sense to some buyers. If they see a lot of $19.99 shirts and then they see one that's $21.99, right? They don't know that they're all the same shirt and that they're all sold by Amazon. They might assume, well, this one's more expensive, so it might be better, right? Might be better quality.
That's my theory too. Is like that quality perception. It's
if
like,
you have
if I see a $21.99 shirt and a $13.99 shirt, and they're both exactly the same, I'm going to just assume that the $13.99 shirt is worse quality. It's just one of those things. So there's like value in higher prices just by nature, even if it's an identical product. The customer, and they could even review the product better than the lower price product because they have this, like, I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, I don't know all the terms of that, but there's definitely a lot of that at play when it comes to pricing. It's worth testing out. I mean, that's all you can really do at the end of the day is just test everything. There's no one right answer, and it may not work for your products. What works for me or for you may not work for someone else. You don't really know until you test it, but it's worth testing for sure to have higher margin as ammo for your ads. And I see that just in general working across the board, not only for my own products, but for other sellers' products as well.
Yeah.
Even just different types of products, not even just merch on demand, but also just any, your more typical products, FBA sellers, FBM, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would also say like it definitely depends on the niche or the marketplace even, because I get quite a lot of sales in the UK as well. And I feel like there, if I change my price to $19.99, that already sees like a drop in sales. Like I tend to keep mine at $17.99, but the royalties are also a bit higher in the UK compared to the US, so you can kind of justify that. But my best seller at the moment is priced at $22.99 in the US. And again, I haven't really seen a difference to last year where it was always priced at $19.99. And you do get a lot of extra clicks throughout. So yeah, what's your best seller priced at? Do you know?
$21.99 at this point.
Have you tested it?
Yeah, it's not even just the exposure. Well, part of it is like being able to run ads is like you're able to now compete for search terms that are maybe more competitive. And if you can start ranking for those, then you get the organic, kind of that snowball effect with sales velocity of starting to get sales. So there's just a lot of like benefits to just having more to spend on ads and what that can do for your product. Not even just straight up sales from the ads, but just how ads affect your ranking and getting more sales from the organic.
When should we start ramping up then? Because, I've got the same experience as you with November. The sales start, slowly growing. I don't have that many Halloween designs. But, if we've got a lot of evergreen stuff, should we raise our bids ahead of time, like in October, to sort of get better BSRs in advance? Or
I mean, as far as like ramping up, I think it's kind of a process. I mean, really starting a month ago, 2 months ago, where if you're not running ads, absolutely start. You want these already running and optimizing. You don't really want to be testing new stuff in November and December when things are just a lot more expensive. You can do it. It's just going to cost you a lot more money in general. So really you want to start testing stuff ahead of time. There's still some time. I mean, I would say in general, it takes a couple months to really optimize or more, depending on how much data you're getting, because it's all optimization is just based on the data that you're getting. The more sales and clicks you're getting, the more data you have, the faster you can make decisions and optimize. If you're only getting a couple sales a month, it's just not a lot to work with to know, is this working? It's not. It's just, we don't know because there's just not enough data. So really, like, the ramp up starts already, like starting to just have ads, see what the performance is. And when it comes to like really increasing bids, probably around a week before Black Friday, maybe 2 weeks, I'm going to look at my last year's campaigns and see what keywords and targets worked, what performed well, and what their cost per click was, so that I know I have a gauge on what I need to be, what my range needs to be this year. So if I see this, hey, this search term, gifts for dad, sold really well last year and had a CPC of $1.50 over Black Friday to December, I know that's the range I need to be in to be competitive. If I'm only at 50 cents right now, I'm probably going to start increasing and get closer towards that CPC I knew worked last year. It's probably going to be a little bit higher this year because ads prices just generally increase. So I use that as a tool.
How do you do that, by the way? How do you do that?
I'm using Merchar to do that. We store your advertising data for life, so any of our users that have been with us through last holiday season have all of their advertising data from last year, where that can be difficult with, I mean, Amazon just doesn't give it to you. You can see the last 65 to 90 days, depending on the type of data it is. You can look at like how much you spend, like the overall metrics, but when it comes to diving into the actual search terms, the keywords, the targets that did work well and what their stats were, Merchar gives you the tools to do that. Look at specific dates. If I want to look at just Black Friday and see what CPCs were for this specific, or even the target CPC, where it calculates what your conversion rate was then versus your average order value and your target A cost, what you want to hit. It tells you what you need to hit for your cost per click to hit your goal. So it just gives me a ballpark. I'm not going to necessarily like go from 50 cents to $1.50 in that example just overnight, but I'm going to start working up towards that, knowing this is where I need to be.
Like over a few weeks, you sort of build up to
a couple weeks probably, and just see, because that performance is going to shift pretty greatly as soon as Black Friday starts compared to prior to Black Friday. So there's some different, I don't want to necessarily go overboard, but still it gives me an advantage to know, like, I'm not going to be slowly, incrementally increasing it 5 cents a day, wondering if this is the bid I need to be at on Black Friday. I'm doing that process a couple weeks ahead of time to know I'm already on Black Friday going to be at very competitive bids, knowing that if it converted last year, it's probably going to perform pretty well this year as well. And there's different search terms that get used during Q4 that don't get used the rest of the year when it comes to, or for a lot of the year, or the traffic greatly increases. So that volume changes significantly for a lot when it comes to anything around like buying gifts for people. There's a lot more traffic on those gift buying terms that just doesn't happen throughout the rest of the year.
What do you think about that in general? Because, you know, Amazon doesn't allow gift anymore in the listings. I know like old listings still have that included. So I guess if people are posting new designs, that's probably a problem if they want to be found on those.
Yeah, I don't think it matters, because you can still, for one, you can advertise on those terms. I mean, for most sellers, if you just have kind of a general, your product evergreen, you're not going to be competing necessarily for like gifts for dad, that specific term. Like that's going to be, I mean, all the different products, a lot of them have higher margins. Like that's going to be very difficult to compete on. You're looking at a couple dollars per click for that specific term. But looking at like niche down versions of that, depending on whatever your product is, I don't know, whatever a very niche product is, poodle gifts for dad, like if that's your shirt, it's going to be a more niche down version of it. I don't think you don't have to use those terms necessarily in your listing to, for one, definitely you don't have to run ads, and you can still index for terms that aren't in your listing. If those keywords aren't in your listing, you can still show up for those if you're selling for it. Amazon's not going to just delist you because these words aren't in your listing. They use that's just for them to get an idea of what a new product is and where to show it. They're going to list you on far more. I mean, we're not talking about just, you know, a few dozen terms. We're talking about thousands of different search terms that your product, like that's what your goal is, to be listed on. Indexed is what we call it when you show up for a term. You want to be indexing for thousands of search terms, not just a few dozen.
if you've ever looked at like a search term report for a lottery campaign, you know, there's like all these random long search terms that, yeah, you do definitely index on a lot of stuff that you wouldn't expect to. But
Speaking of search term report, I mean, definitely if you're not using a tool like Merchjar, you want to be saving those search term reports. You can do that through your ad count, especially this holiday sales data. Like this is data that you're paying for. Don't lose it. Our tool just makes it easy to just save all that information for you, and you can reference it at any point and look at certain date ranges. It is going to be more challenging with Amazon's tools. You have to download a spreadsheet for just the last 65 days, for example, and then you got to piece all that together.
you have to know how it works. Yeah,
Pivot tables and all that. So if you're not looking to do that. Sign up for Merchjar. We have a free trial for the holidays. You can use it for sure. Yeah. Otherwise, save your data. You're paying for it. But it is a good point on search term. It's if you haven't looked at that information, if ever before, it's very enlightening and surprising what you'll see in your search term reports of what people are actually searching. And there's just a lot more ways people are searching than you can probably anticipate. But it's also good for getting ideas for like product if you're in the print on demand business, you can create products for specific search terms. So it's a great place to just do product research. I know I've created products in the past.
Yeah, it's like a hidden niche research method, isn't it? That I guess you need an Amazon Ads account for it to be able to do it, but I don't think many people know about it, and it's definitely a super interesting one because you're getting the data straight from Amazon.